Hi, hello, and welcome, or welcome back, I suppose. Sometimes you go into a book knowing that the quality might be negligible, but sometimes, you're going to give it a go anyway. I certainly do because I review books, and that means going out on a limb sometimes. A few weeks ago, I was out with a friend, just doing a little bit of window shopping, mooching about, as you do. There were two books that caught my eye, for better or worse. I believe this was in the works, and the other one was in TK Maxx. Now, the book I'm looking at next week seems like it could be good, but with no guarantees. This one, however, seemed awful from the off, and that meant I knew that it would be perfect for review purposes. Maybe I'd get lucky, and the quality would be far better than the blurb implied, and it wouldn't be some book talk romance drivel. That might have happened. Today we're talking about The Wedding Witch by Erin Sterling. Let's just dive in, and we got spoilers ahead. This book follows Bowen Penhallow and Tamsin Bly. Bowen is a witch from a long line of them, and a little while ago he sort of lost his friend in a magical mishap. He's not technically dead, but he is a ghost, and ever since then Bowen has been trying to sort out that whole mess. Tamsin is an acquirer. She's not magical herself, but seeks out magical objects for those who require them. She's worked for Bowen a number of times, but the opening to the book is them meeting to make a deal where he becomes her sole client. At the end of this meeting, but right before shaking on the deal, they kiss. Tamsin's rule is to never do anything with clients, and technically he isn't at that point. There's fluff in between, but we'll get to that in the review. For now, let's just cut to a year later. Declan, the ghost, rallies Bowen into going to the wedding of the girl he would have married himself if not for the whole ghost thing, a girl called Caris. Meanwhile, Tamsin browses a site she's not visited in a while. It's where she used to pick up clients back before only working with Bowen. People list magical type objects on there that they're seeking, and they do that along with an asking price. She's looking for a one last job type listing and finds just that when she happens upon a listing for a brooch. The client says they can get her into the wedding if she can get this object, and if she gets it, she'll be $1 million richer. Unsurprisingly, they're at the same wedding. There's a ghost haunting the place. It seems to be causing problems on purpose, and Caris believes that it's Declan not wanting her to move on. We know this isn't true, but it is a fair assumption on her part. During dinner, Caris has a bit of a breakdown, saying that she shouldn't be marrying this new man and it should be Declan with her right now. She runs off, Bowen and Tamsin chase her, and they end up in a garden maze where Caris is in a bit of a state, clutching the brooch and speaking into it, clearly casting a spell. This winds up with Bowen and Tamsin being flung back in time to the 50s, and it becomes their mission to figure out how to make things right and get them back to the present. Now, the thing with the fluff in between the sort of opening chapter and they're both going to be at a wedding soon is just a series of emails and text messages. I assume it's meant to set up that they have this a flirty, silly dynamic. It's like, you could have set that up by just going, 1 year later, this is what they're like now. It was entirely unnecessary, really annoying, and I feared that this was going to be so much of the book, and it was, I think, 3 or 4 chapters of it, all just in the prologue, by the way, so I was just like, oh god, I'm fucked. And then I remember getting to the actual, chapter 1 and going, oh my god, that was just the fucking prologue. Oh my god. Yeah, that was painful. But, I want to really start off by saying that while this isn't the best book I've ever read, it isn't actually the worst. I have a whole host of complaints, but generally speaking, the writing is fine. I didn't clock stuff like spelling and grammar issues, which is more common than I'd like, and I generally wasn't finding that any stylistic choices usually didn't get in the way of what Sterling was aiming for. I would guess the how wasn't usually the issue with the writing overall, but it was the what was being said, but it's just, like I said, the writing in terms of style didn't, apart from that fucking text message stuff, didn't generally make me go, oh Jesus fucking Christ. It was what she was saying itself. Because there's one feature of this book that will piss me off anytime I think about it in the future. And it also happens to be a feature of one of our lead characters, Bowen. See, Bowen has a beard. You will be told that Bowen has a beard more than you will ever need to be told that a man has a beard. At first, I was simply annoyed about the anatomy of the thing. As she approached, he could see that her eyes were the same rich brown as her hair, and she had dimples in each cheek, deep ones, and Bowen was suddenly very glad he'd decided to grow a beard all those years ago, because he was pretty sure he was blushing. Now folks, I've seen a good number of blokes with beards in my time. Proper big bushy ones too, like Santa style big old bushy beard. Can any of you explain to me how a man's beard could cover the fact that he's blushing? Like, later on, Sterling makes this make sense because he feels the flush of heat rise up his neck. You got a massive beard, that'd cover that. Fine. The only answer I have to this bit, however, is that he can shuffle his beard about when it's cold and he turns it into a big hairy balaclava. It's a weird visual, but it's the only answer I have. And if that had been the only beard mention, I mean, I still would have brought it up because it, you know, it's still a bit of a, oh, wasn't that silly kind of thing. But then the beard just kept being mentioned, and in the weirdest ways. It's like, it's not that we get more full-face beard like that, but it's just that Sterling makes it appear like nobody else in this world has a beard at all. I'm sure what she's aiming for is that he has like a substantial beard, so it's worth comment, but that isn't the vibe that we get. People that aren't Tamsin comment on it like it's some mythical creature that lives on its face. On his face. It's simply astounding that he has facial hair. And Tamsin, look, I get it. I love a man with a beard too. It's a nice feature. And Bowen has that kind of rugged lumberjack vibe going on. Of course he has a beard, and that adds to the allure. But she gets off thinking about his beard, and it's weird. Again, it's not that she's just into the look, it's that she won't talk about anything else when she's swooning. And I don't know if it's something that comes up as often as it feels like it does, but it's made out to be this new and fantastical thing every single time it's mentioned. And it's mentioned by so many people too. And like, I'm sorry, a lot of this book is in the middle of rural Wales, maybe even up north, and you've never seen a bearded man. Never. Not once. It's so infuriating. It's the one thing that genuinely stressed me out throughout. Most of my problems are little things that kind of add up, or it's the sort of thing I've seen plenty of times before. But this, I mean, at least it's not a constant mention of someone's like oceanic orbs or whatever, but Jesus fucking Christ. Though, speaking of frequent sort of romance book problems, why can't men ever last in these books? On the one hand, it is obviously for the best that the focus is on female pleasure, and that is definitely the case here. On the other hand, these men can never make it over the turn of a damn page. Darling boy, you have a paragraph, and then we're moving on. You get as many thrusts as a Mormon who's just discovered the soaking loophole. This isn't even a major complaint. I just, I wouldn't be reading books like this if it weren't for review, because they aren't really my thing outside of doing this, but I obviously ended up picking up on patterns with this stuff, and that's one that always makes me giggle. And it isn't the only one. Why do spicy romance authors do everything to tell us that their leads love each other, except make them naturally fall for one another? Like, sure, they're always saying that they've fallen for one another, but they say so to themselves before making confessions, but really it just seems like they want to shag a lot, which is fine, by the way. A lot of these books would actually be improved if the author just committed to their leads being, say, friends with benefits. A lot of issues would be solved, but that's not so in this case. These two being head over heels in love is kind of a major plot point, especially as the story wraps up. Now, I had an ebook version and it came to a little over 200 pages, and looking up the paperback version, that's just shy of 300. Either way, Sterling had more than enough time to set up the two of them noticeably falling for one another outside of the remits of being all hot and bothered, but just opted for telling us over and over that they're totally in love, and they always have been this whole time, right from the moment they met at the pub at the start. I'm hardly an expert in writing romance, but if romance is what's being promised to me, then god damn it, you better deliver. And that isn't to say that being down bad can't be a part of it. Obviously, a lot of attraction does come from wanting to bump uglies, but this book falls into the trap that so many in its genre do, in that it seems to forget that there's far more to romance than sexual attraction. Him worrying about getting a hard-on when he puts his arm around her waist is not a telltale sign of blossoming love. When in the final moments of their time in the 50s, the two of them are basically screaming at each other that they love each other so much and they'd sacrifice themselves for the other in a heartbeat, I'm sure I was meant to be like, yeah, that's right, and in the moment with them, maybe even on the brink of tears, but it all just felt so hollow. Show versus tell is one of the most basic writing fundamentals, and yet every time I talk about a subpar book, I have to talk about it again and again and again. And to be clear, telling your audience what they need to know can be a useful tool, and it often goes hand in hand with showing them that stuff too. For example, in a romance book, the biggest tell moment is often a first kiss or a confession of love, but that moment is earned by having shown the reader that these feelings exist in the first place. Maybe you show them having the little moments that are shared, small touches that feel tingly, unexpected blushes, maybe an internal realization of feelings. Then you can show them the big picture all brought together. But Sterling just has two characters telling themselves, and therefore the reader, that they are falling in love. And rather than showing us any real moments of sweet romance blossoming, it's just moments where the two of them are thinking, smash. And I am, of course, more than aware that you have to know your audience. People wanting to see a little bit of shagging is fine. That isn't my issue at all. And to be fair, barring what I mentioned earlier with Bowen's inability to last, the sex scenes are well written. I wasn't cringing at anything or feeling like Sterling has never heard of the human body before. I don't recall much use of things like her core instead of actual anatomical terms. I think stuff like that was used, but it didn't feel egregious. I know this is the area where I am not the target audience, but I still have functional reading comprehension and can tell when something is utter piss. And in this case, those scenes were not utter piss. However, the sexual overtones of this book outside of the act itself was a weird feature. It generally ties into the fact that a lot of the characters, especially Tamsin, talk like characters in a book or a film instead of anything close to what real people talk like. She's meant to be all quippy and funny, kind of like a sitcom lead or something like that, but it didn't really land for me. I think that can work when they also have natural speech as well, but that just isn't the case here. The place where it stands out the most is just how much sex is brought up, not just by her, but by her in particular. In the 50s, it's Bowen's grandparents that they have to unite in order to make things work. More than once, Tamsin just thinks it's normal to comment that they're so hot, they're piping hot, they're really hot, ooh. And remarking that they're good looking in some way is fine, and maybe even saying, oh, it's clear where Bowen gets his looks from, works, but it feels like she's down bad for these two as well, and it feels wholly inappropriate. And there are multiple occurrences like this, where it's as if all anyone thinks of in this book is sex, and in a huge way, it does feel tied back to what I was saying earlier with the way that romance and sex are often conflated. There's a multitude of moments where I was just sat grimacing at the text in front of me because it's like these people have no sense of time and place in this book. It just felt weird. If it were once or twice where someone makes maybe a bit of an off-colour comment where you go, ooh, and it feels like a sort of naughty joke, then I think that'd be fine. But it just feels like no one knows how to behave themselves. And if I have to be the one to understand social cues and rules better than you do, then I think we have a bit of a problem, don't we? On the whole, I think I get why someone might enjoy this book. In the way that one can turn their brain off and enjoy a fast-paced action film, this sort of thing is the romance equivalent. But for me, even when reading something that isn't exactly going to become a literary classic, I do still have standards that this book just could not meet. The cons outweigh the pros for me, even if this is not the worst thing I've ever read, by a country mile too. And maybe Sterling's other works are far better quality than this, but I don't think I'll be seeking them out to see if that's the case. Next week, we're on the other book I saw during my little outing, that being Neon Gods. I believe it's a modern retelling of the Hades and Persephone story, so we're back on our Greek mythology stuff. From what I gather, this has very mixed reviews, so we'll just have to see for ourselves. I don't know what my call to action is this week. Tell me about some good Welsh literature in any genre, just to make me feel better about having read this, I guess. To keep up with what I'm doing, feel free to like, feel free to subscribe, and feel free to ring that notification bell, all the cringe shit I'm supposed to ask you to do in my videos. But most importantly, I hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, a wonderful whenever you are watching this. Take good care of yourself. Right.